Hi, and welcome to Whole Heart Transformation. I am Melissa Alguera, your personal identity life coach. Let's go to the podcast. Hi, guys. Welcome to Whole Heart Transformation. Today, I have some very special guests with me. I'm so excited to introduce you to Shannon and Kendra Disney. They have not only been clients of mine over the last year, but I also found them to be incredible people who I wanted to invite into my coaching training. And they've taken the training and are now practicing this as coaches themselves. And their story is really incredible. And I asked them to come on to share. So welcome, Kendra and Shannon, today. I'm so happy you guys are here. Why don't you guys go ahead if you want and just share a little bit more about why you're here and what's going on in your life.
Well, thanks so much for having us on. We're excited to share a story. We haven't actually shared our stories publicly before, so this will be our first time to do that.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm so honored.
Thank you.
So we met in 08 and got married in 08. We married very quickly after getting to know each other. We not very long after we had gotten married, we had our first discovery. It was one that that wasn't physical, but she had said that.
Really
Yeah.
And Shannon, can you just clarify for people listening, because not everybody that follows me is in betrayal, trauma, or addiction. So if you can just express a little bit more about what you mean by discovery.
Okay, a discovery is when the partner of an addict or someone that's related to the addict finds out about the acting of behavior.
Thanks.
Yeah. So we had joined our blended family together. We have 7 kids together. And we were trucking along, and it just didn't take very much time at all to have that first discovery. But at that time, I blamed myself. There were some components that made me take blame for that, and so and not knowing, the things that I know today. And so we went on for and did life, and we've always been super close, like best friends, like
Yep.
just super in love, and another discovery came a few years later, and on that discovery these terms started coming out, and he said, I think I have a problem. And so tell a little bit about that.
So I had felt some compulsion and some I felt some compulsion to be an obsession to talk to people, talk to women, and so that happened, and it felt like I couldn't stop. I felt, that's like all of a sudden, like I can't stop doing it. I no matter how hard I try, I just can't stop. And so we had that discovery, and I had ended up going to a couple 12-step meetings. And within those 12-step meetings, people would talk about the stuff that they, kind of some of the acting out behavior, but not like super much because it's triggering to some people. But they would start talking about all this stuff that they do. And I was like, there's just absolutely no way I'm as bad as these guys. There's just no way. And so I quit going. And I thought that I could just, okay, this is I'm on a lower level, it felt like, and I'm just stop. I'll get the willpower if I pray enough, or I whatever I do enough, it'll be enough, and I'll ask God to get rid of it, and it'll be gone.
Yeah.
That didn't happen.
Right. That's so funny that you share that, because I remember specifically my husband saying the same thing. Like, he went to a meeting and one of the guys had, multiple affair partners, and he was like, well, I'm not this bad, and it's like, wow, actually, no, it's all there. Maybe at that point he hadn't done all the behaviors just yet, or some in our marriage. He had done the behaviors already, the acting out behaviors prior to our marriage. But at that point, we were only married a few short years too. So I get that, like that thinking, that deception, towards yourself, really.
Right.
Mhm.
Right. The denial, it's the denial that the diminishing. I mean, it's diminishing to ourselves where I can't be that bad.
Right.
There's no way I'm that bad.
Right.
So that happened, and we continued to move on. But as it moved on, the hiding got better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The behavior got worse.
Yeah.
And so we had our third discovery.
Yeah.
And Shannon, before you move on, like I would really love, if you're okay with it, for you to share what is happening inside of you as you're, thinking about this and reflecting, man, the hiding got better, it got worse. Tell us about that if that's okay.
Um, it got to the point where, okay, so I'm feeling a lot of guilt for, for what I've done. Um, I've dealt with a lot of shame, so I don't feel like I'm a horrible person. But there's a lot of guilt for the pain that I've caused, Kendra.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that pain in me still comes up. Also, um, it's not just pain for them, but it's pain for us. There's a lot of pain that's involved um, in our aspect of it. It's
Yeah.
not always actually, it's not always fun, because of um, there's a lot of negative to it. There's a lot of negative talk and a lot of negative connotations that you tell yourself um, when you're doing it. There's a lot of shame. So there's a lot to deal with on our side as well.
Yeah. I'm so happy that we paused for that, because I think this is a side that many people don't see when we're talking about behaviors that we do that we don't like, especially addictive behaviors when it comes to sexual compulsion. I think societally, a lot of people think, oh, it's fun, it's exciting. I know that that was one of my biggest struggles when I was going through this with my husband. I was like, yeah, like this had to be great for you. It's sex. Of course, it's great. And to hear your perspective of what was actually happening in you and how it's impacted you is super important. So I'm glad you stopped to share that. Yeah.
Thank you. So we moved on, we kept going. Like I said, I did a couple of meetings. I tried to white knuckle more, which means that you try to deal with it on your own, and you just try to have the willpower. The willpower will stop. But it doesn't. It just continues. So we had our third discovery.
It took a few more years.
Took a couple more
It
years
seemed
for
like we
that.
were on a clock, a
Mhm.
schedule of every few years,
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that discovery happened, and we went to therapy. She found a CSAT. I found a local therapist in from our church that was a therapist, and I started going to him. I went to a group for a little while, and so that happened. And then about 6, 8 months into it, my therapist was like, "Okay, I think you're good. I think we're good." And that was not true.
Yeah.
It's every time you think that, it you fall again.
Yeah.
Um, it's like taking medicine for your blood pressure, and your blood pressure is normal, so let's stop taking the blood pressure medicine. Well, that's not, you're not fixed.
Yeah.
So then I fell back into it. I know that some people think that, well, how do you fall back into it? Well, it happens to be that it starts off slowly, and then before you know it, you are so deep in, and then the shame builds up again, and then you're coping with this, and now you feel like you feel like a piece of crap because, now you're back into doing it and destroying the lives that you have that's close to you.
Yeah.
And so it feels like it's a never ending cycle for a
Yeah.
while.
Before
Uh,
you move on, Shannon, I had a question about your CSAT and you, because you said that he felt like you were done, like
she
you were.
had a C, she's had a CSAT. I had it just a counselor at LPC. So
Oh,
mine wasn't a CSAT.
okay, okay, okay. So
Mhm.
that's really important to note specifically, because when you don't have somebody who understands compulsive sexual behavior, what you're trying to escape and numb, specifically how you got there, the traumas that are related, or if it's even trauma reenactment, it's really important for people to know that, because I have a lot of clients who have gone to counselors and they were like, well, I don't understand why I didn't get the help, shouldn't they all know? And it's so true that CSATs, counselors, people who are trained in this stuff they are worlds apart. They have such big differences. So I'm glad
And
that you.
there's a lot of times that you can look on these websites and they'll say sex addiction trained, or they know something about sex addiction, but if they don't have that CSAT thing behind their name, they don't know enough.
Yes. Yeah. Super important. Thank you. I'm glad you shared that piece. Yeah.
And the odd part was I had a CSAT.
Yeah.
He didn't, but he wanted to go with the guy at church, and that made sense. So, and the guy at church had spoke at church about this type of addiction and porn addiction and stuff, and so he felt safe there.
Yeah.
And they were in the same office, and they collaborated,
Yeah.
and they agreed that he was good and that I was safe,
Mhm.
and they sent us on our way.
So really quick too, I'm curious what you and the therapist, Shannon, determined that you were good. Like I'm curious what you guys thought was good for you to be able just to move on.
Well, it's hard to remember that because there's another aspect of this addiction that kind of block memories.
Okay.
You fuzz things out, your brain gets fuzzy, and it's hard to remember things like that. So I don't remember exactly what made that feel like that, but it wasn't all it wasn't all the therapist's fault either, though, because in another aspect of things, I wasn't 100% truthful with the
Yeah.
therapist.
Mhm.
Um, there was yeah, I may be a porn addict, but I'm not physically acting out, and actually I was. So there's a lot of things that it's not always even necessarily that LPC or the therapist has that the wrong thing, but being 100% to anybody you talk to about it is the only way to get out.
Yeah.
The only way to feel the relief of the pain, of the shame. If you don't feel that relief of that shame, there's something wrong.
Yeah.
You still have secrets, and shame is something you got to work through. It's a process. It's not, and there's still times that I feel shame, but they're not near as bad, near as much. So that went on, and again, the the behavior got worse, so the hiding got to get better.
We didn't do a disclosure.
We did not do a
We were
disclosure.
told
Yeah.
Can you say that again, Kendra?
we didn't need a disclosure then, so we didn't do one.
Oh, oh, yeah.
Because even my CSAT said yours isn't that bad.
Right.
You don't need that.
Oh,
Right.
wow. Okay.
So yeah, so just because they have the CSAT doesn't mean that they're the greatest either. I
You
mean,
never
so
know.
it's hard to find that kind of stuff,
Wow.
Um, so we went on.
Yeah, we went on. I had been pretty devastated on the third one. I became sick in my body. I had a lot of mental problems. My body went downhill. I had a lot of health problems. But I thought we were rebuilding. And from my perspective, even though I was having all these problems, um, I thought those were my problems, personally. And I thought that our marriage was really, really growing and flourishing, and that he was doing so much better. And I felt safe. again. I felt completely safe. I trusted him wholeheartedly. And then another discovery came.
Yeah.
So in that aspect of things, I faked recovery. There was a fake in recovery. There was, I told her that I was good. There's no, I'm not doing that stuff anymore. And I still had secrets.
Right. Yeah.
And so the secrets got worse, and the behavior got worse, and the fake therapy or the fake recovery got worse.
Yeah.
So
And
then,
before you move on really quick, Shannon, I'm curious, Kendra, can you share some of the symptomatic things that you were having? Because if I'm getting this right, you were saying that you thought that things were good, but Shannon, you were faking it. You were faking recovery. And I want to, if we
Yeah.
can ask about that, but if you're okay with it, but what kind of symptoms were you having? Just so some of the,
Yeah.
you
I
can,
was diagnosed with depression and ADD, adult ADHD.
really?
And yeah, I
Huh.
couldn't focus at all. I couldn't,
Yeah.
I wasn't productive like I had been in the past. I gained a lot of weight. I started having chronic migraines. I
Mm.
had chronic fatigue syndrome. I thought I had an autoimmune disease. I couldn't figure out what it was. I had been trying to figure it out for years because I was in a lot of pain for reasons that I couldn't understand.
Mm.
And so there was a lot going on in my body.
Yeah.
And
That is a
it,
lot.
it was a lot. And I
And it's
couldn't figure out,
crazy.
like, why am I so sick?
Yeah.
I couldn't figure it out.
And it's crazy that you were diagnosed with ADD, ADHD, because I've never experienced you that way, you know? So it's like,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
totally like a trauma response or
I
something
was,
happened
I was
inside.
on a lot of medicine, a lot of medicine. It was
Yeah.
crazy, which was
Yeah.
something that I didn't even really agree with. I'm kind of like a holistic person, but I felt so horrible. I laid on the couch and I spent a lot of time in bed and on the couch for a couple of years
Yeah.
before I was able to function again.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think that is a really important thing to mention with betrayal trauma is that you do have your brain is like scrambled eggs in a lot of ways. Like your brain doesn't know how to process things. I remember, I mean, still to this day, some of my vocabulary, like I cannot, and many people that listen to me probably would never say that this is true, but there are times where I'm sitting and having a conversation and I'm like, it's a simple word, but I can't get it from my brain to my mouth, you know? So
Mhm.
that part of your brain because it has something to do with the trauma in the part of your brain that gives you speech that is
Mhm.
affected even with betrayal trauma. So it's like, yeah, it makes sense that your brain was, I don't know, maybe like hyper alert or something like that.
Yeah. But also, as we know now, was a big mistake. I didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell anybody, only my therapist.
Wow.
And I didn't tell my best friend. I didn't tell anybody in my family. I didn't tell a soul.
Yeah.
And I was very alone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that I can see even now, like that's painful. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think that that's the aspect that many partners deal with is like they don't feel like they can share it with anybody what's happening or they get
Yeah.
or if you did try like you're dismissed with your reality, you know, or it's
I
even
was shameful.
yeah,
I have the shame.
right,
Mhm.
right, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, thanks for sharing
So
that.
then we had the most recent discovery, and that's been 2 years ago now. Um, and it was a hard blow after thinking that we had rebuilt.
Yeah,
And so, um, but we did things different this time. Like I knew some things this time that I didn't know before because we had done some recovery. And
mm,
so this time I was like, we're doing a disclosure. We're doing where I had a checklist of all the things that I remembered in my head that all the other girls in my group had done that I had not done.
yeah,
And I was like, oh, we're doing them all now.
yeah.
And
I stand
it was
on the disclosure piece too, because I actually haven't talked about this very much in my podcast. So I think it's super important if you're okay to highlight. What is a disclosure?
So a disclosure is when you prepare with your therapist, each of you prepare with your therapist or your coach, and plan a session, a longer session, not a normal session, where everybody meets in the same room and he discloses everything that I didn't know about, all the secrets, all the lies, all the shame comes out. All the behaviors are then known to me. And then it's done in a way where you're kept regulated by your therapist. It's healthy. They look over, like he writes it out first. They look over it, make sure that it's going to convey the information the safest way possible. And we did that.
Did you guys have a therapist and a coach or two therapists for you guys to help you in that, or for you, Kendra?
We had two therapists. We each had
Okay.
a therapist.
But
Oh,
to be
good.
honest, we figured it out on our own.
Yeah.
We did a lot of research. We figured it out on our own, and we told the therapist, "This is what we're doing, and this is what we need you to do."
Yeah.
Because I didn't feel like they even had the skills that we needed, and so
And they were both CSATs.
which was sad.
Yeah.
So one of them, it was her first
Mhm.
disclosure, but we did that. We followed it with a polygraph.
Yeah.
Very important. I wouldn't do one without a polygraph. I don't feel like there's a point.
Yeah.
I
agree.
So we did, yeah, we did that. We both saw CSATs again at that time. He started a lot of meetings. I started some support groups as well. And we did a lot of therapy, a lot of different kinds of therapy. And they were I'm just, we were grasping at all the straws. We're gonna do this, and that, everything.
Okay, so I want to back up a little bit. So when we had our discovery, she talked to her therapist, the same therapist that she had before, and she's like, we need to figure this out. And within 3 weeks, I was in a treatment center.
Sure.
I went to an 2-week intensive focused on healing childhood trauma that results in sex addiction.
Yeah.
So that was a huge step for me. That was a huge step for me. That's where I learned my emotions.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm 45 years old and I never knew what an emotion was. Because I hid them. I bottled them up inside. And so we did that. I went to this treatment center. I came back. She said I looked different, to a point where I looked different.
Yes.
Was weird. Who are you? Why do you look different? I can't figure it out.
Okay. I have to echo this because this was my same experience with Malachi. When he actually went and saw Blaine Bartell, who's in Oklahoma, and he did an intensive with him, and it was exactly the same. I was just like, who are you? Like the guy I've known, like he looked like a man almost, and I realized he looked like such a little boy for so long. And now that he was getting some reality and like feeling his feelings and knowing that he had the addiction, very similar experience. So I get you guys.
Such a bizarre
Yeah.
thing. Because I couldn't figure it out. I was like, did he get a tan? Did he do his face or hair different? Like what? I couldn't figure it out. And I just would keep saying, you look different. And it's creeping me. It creeped me out.
Yeah.
I couldn't figure it out.
And I wish that we had talked about this more, even about this piece, because I think this is also important because it shows, right? Like transformation actually shows, or a shift, emotional, like releasing, it shows on a person. And so, yeah, I love that you shared that.
Yeah, he's talked different. I said, we don't even speak the same language anymore. He talked different. And I would try to communicate the way that we he no longer spoke my language. And so then we had to figure that out. That was very bizarre.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very
Yeah.
strange.
Yeah.
We did a lot of therapy. We did a lot of different types of stuff. And we were getting by, but we weren't okay. And it took me a year to find you. Like I found you a year in. And I mean, as you witnessed, that was not okay. So, but after I found you, we would tell each other about our sessions anytime we had sessions. And I would go talk to him and tell him different things. And it changed the way we communicated.
Mm.
We could then communicate, and we had gotten to a point where we could not. We could, we didn't have any tools of communication. Everything ended in a fight. And after starting to bring some of this stuff to him, it opened up a world of communication that we didn't know existed before.
Right.
It was very life changing.
I didn't know what empathy was before.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to be empathetic. Because when she'd say something about the way she was feeling about what I've done, it would bring shame.
Right.
And shame would block empathy.
Yes.
And so she would say, you're just saying the words. You're not even feeling. You're not even feeling it. You're just saying the words. I can't. You look like a robot. And in some aspects of that, I had to be. I had to learn the words before I got the feelings. And when I started feeling the feelings of the empathy, when we'd worked together, it changed our whole lives.
Yeah.
It changed everything.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's an aspect that I find to be so common with the addicts that I work with, is that they're doing all this. First of all, they're already so much in their head, right? Like all of the numbing and escaping keeps you just in your brain. It doesn't really keep you connected to your body. And so that's like first. And then secondly, to have empathy, you have to be able to be empathized with, to experience empathy. And I mean true empathy. Like I'm not talking about the empathy where your parent used you and you always felt sad for your parent because they used you emotionally. No, I'm talking about real empathy where it's felt you feel with the person because you're healthy and whole and you're okay with yourself and can have separation and your experience and their experience and still be with them.
Yeah.
Versus like the shame blocking you from feeling your own feelings and shame blocking you from being able to sit with her experience. And then the emotional deficiencies, which a lot of addicts deal with because you have been numbing and escaping for so long, or you didn't have the attunement and empathy and care you needed as a kid. And I find this to be what I hear so much, the robotic. I mean, I can echo that too. I mean, that was Malachi for a while, I mean, it took him probably a good solid 2.5 years to really be able to start expressing his own emotion without needing a paper or like to stop and go, what is it, and him just doing the same thing. So it makes a lot of sense that that's kind of where you guys found yourself, where you're trying to do it with, I'm saying a paper, but that's what we did. We had a paper in front of us at all times too. And it felt so adolescent. Like it was like, shouldn't we have learned this in like kindergarten?
Yeah.
Shouldn't we have learned how
How
to
do you not know? Yeah.
Right. And I think for me, even I realized that I was emotionally deficient as well as we started going through that process. So yeah. So
Yeah.
okay, so you guys, so at this point now, so you've had what I think you said it was about a year, Kendra, of therapy groups, recovery stuff. And then you start seeing me. I think you were a to me.
Yeah.
And that kind of spills over into your relational dynamic. So tell everyone a little bit more about that, like for you. So what was happening in you as you were seeing me and as you were shifting in your own self?
I'm trying to actually remember. I think learning that there were parts of me and that one part wasn't all of me. So that if I was angry, that didn't mean like I was suddenly this crazy, bitter woman and would be that way forever. It didn't mean
I
that.
love
Or
that.
if
Yeah.
I was sad, it didn't mean that now I had a horrible depression disorder for the rest of my life. Like there were parts of me that showed up. And then I could share that with him. Do you know there's parts of me? Like, do you know there's parts of you? And I'm sure he thought I was crazy at first, but but I could talk to him and I could step back and realize that these were parts. And soon after that, I was finding relief, and he could see that in me,
Mhm.
that I was feeling better. I wasn't spiraling as much. Like I was calmer. And he was like, okay, whatever that secret sauce is, I kind of want some of that. And so then we found a new group, a CFC group.
Yes.
Then I joined a CFC group. We both did that. And then he found his own CFC coach. And we've been doing that ever since. Like the group's over, but we've been doing that ever since.
Yeah.
Well, and the parts thing. You came up to me at some point and was like, "It's so crazy how I can feel now that I'm not crazy when part of me just hates you so much, but part of me loves you so much."
Right. I love
Yeah.
that. It's so
Because
true.
that does feel crazy.
Mhm.
And then
Yeah.
when you realize that that's acceptable, that there can be two realities at the same time, that was big for me.
Yeah. It's so true. And like, I love also about how you're sharing the relief that you would get. Because I think a lot of people don't experience this when they do go to a therapist or maybe somebody else that does parts work. Relief is that integration that you're getting with a part. And I think with betrayal trauma, it takes time because you have, especially if you're still with the person that betrayed you, it takes a longer bit of time because you still have parts of you that are integrating an attachment even. So there's like that whole aspect that people don't really know about when it comes to integrating when you're in a relationship where you've been betrayed. And that holding the two realities of I love you and I hate you. And I don't need to feel shame about either one of those things,
Right.
and I can accept
Right.
that. I love that you shared that because it's such a deep reality. I know that for me, I didn't have relief when I was just going to my brain spotter, my EMDR therapist, my regular CSAT. I mean, all these things, I wasn't getting relief until I also was doing this integrative work too. So
Yeah.
it's for people to
I was
understand a big difference.
I would get little bits of relief, but it seems now like it was more surface level, like it was getting through the day relief, where now after every session, I've said this, the entire my brain is working for 3 full days, like processing. I can feel it. I can feel it in my brain. I can feel it in my body. I can feel a change. And he noticed such a big change in me, I think.
Mhm.
Yeah.
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 So that has been, and then the communication. And not that it's been pretty, like it's not always pretty.
Right.
It's not, and it's not easy. It's
And
hard. It's
there's a lot of times that we can now say that we couldn't before. We can say to each other, like, I don't have the capacity for that right now. I need some time before we work on that. I don't have the capacity to deal with that. Because when I first came back from treatment, I didn't have emotions before I went, and I had emotions when I came back, but they were flooding emotions
Yeah.
because they had been bottled up so much, and then they just flood, and they would overwhelm her so much because then she would hold all those feelings and top of my feelings, she would hold hers, and it was just so overwhelming. And so now she can sit back and say, "Hey, I don't have the capacity for that right now," and I can do that. And maybe later she has the capacity for that same feeling that I had, but right now she doesn't.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And to know that that's okay.
Yeah.
I don't have to sit and talk about my feelings if I just can't right now. That
Yeah.
that's acceptable, because you hear so much, well, you need to sit and talk it out. You need to talk about your feelings. You need to share your feelings. And sometimes I'm not able to. Sometimes he's not able to. And so it was kind of given permission that it's okay if you're not able to right now.
Yeah.
And that was freeing, kind of.
Yeah.
And so after this that we've had with you, we wanted that. We wanted to help people. So we're out there as well, trying to help people get that secret sauce, to get that part that we can integrate. We can grow up the parts that are little, and make them not feel alone. Because even the parts inside of us that they have those protective parts in front of them, they feel deadly alone. Like they're so just there, and you can move one of these protector parts inside your brain and go, oh, I can feel that aloneness in that part back there.
Yeah.
And so that's what, so now we just we want to help people just like you do.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is a perfect segue to go into that. So this last January, we did a training for character formation coaches, people that wanted to come along and do this work as well, because they were impacted by it, which is why I did it. I mean, I was already in coaching. I'd gone to train in APSATs and I have done all the ICF stuff, but I was not finding that people were getting transformation with me. And I was so frustrated about that because I was like, there has to be more. There has to be more. And so just like Kendra and Shannon, I also took on the role of getting my character formation coaching under my belt to understand, because I had such an impact too. So this last January, I offered training to only a couple people. I really just, well, actually it was a few. It was more than a couple people. It would have just been you guys, but there was more than that. People that I knew were interested, had the capacity to hold other people's pain, and are still in process, and know that they're still in process and they're okay that they're in process. And so Kendra and Shannon were candidates, and they came and they got this training. And it's been actually really fun. Kendra had reached out to me. I'm talking to the people, not to you guys. But Kendra had reached out to me, I think it was like maybe a month ago, and you were talking with a partner and an addict, and he was getting really angry, and the level of capacity that Kendra, that you had to hold his anger was like, I was like, this is how I know this works. Because when we started, anger was hard. It was a hard emotion for you to hold. But it was here this guy is like going off and he's upset and he's projecting all this stuff onto you. And you were able just to be like, okay, like, and hold your space and be regulated. And so I know that the two of you have something really beautiful to offer people, the secret sauce, right? But you have your own personal secret sauce, because your story is unique to you. Your journey is unique to you. The capacities that you have for people and coaching people is so unique to you. And so I just want people to be able to contact you. If you want, I can just put it in the show notes, or if you want to share a little bit more how they can get a hold of you, if they want to receive your coaching services together or separate, whatever works.
So I have a website. It's feelinganddealing.coach. You can get a hold of me there. It's just push a button and you can send an email and everything over, and we have a free 30-minute discovery call. So you don't have to commit to a bunch of them right away. You can just talk about it at first and see what you think, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, and I don't quite have my website up, so I'm not a techie person. I've been seeing clients, but I don't have a website, so I can be reached through him, but easily though.
What about like an email for you, Kendra? Do you have an email where people can?
Yeah, it's kendradisney@ymail.com.
Okay, great. Yeah. And I'll even put this in the show notes too, so people can get a hold of you. But I just want to say, like, as being your coach and also now a colleague with you guys, I'm honored to hear your story. I'm actually blown away just by the growth and what you shared today. And I think it's going to be so impactful for anybody that wants to go on the journey with you. So thanks for coming today, you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And thanks for listening. If you have found today's podcast helpful, please like, subscribe, and share. If you are interested in coaching with me, go to www.identitylife.coach. And you can also find me on Instagram, identity.life.coach.